continue your drawing exercises, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of animation while you work. And this is a very brief history. It's not comprehensive. I would say check out some of the links that I'll add to the bottom of this video later. Series of drawings in order to depict motion that's been around for thousands of years. There are tons of examples of pictures of combat, training things that have happened, all shown as series of pictures. But later on, in 1825, we see these thaumatropes, these devices that basically was a disc with an image on two sides of it and a string holding the disc. And you would spin it and would superimpose the two images. So, for example, you'd have like a cage on one side, and then on the other side, you'd have a picture of a bird. And then they would spin these things and it would make it look like the bird was inside the cage. Phonaticoscopes were these rotating stroboscopic discs. This is from 1833. Zoetropes around the same time were these spinning cylinders with slits through it that you could look into. Kineographs in 1868. And then paper flip books as well were used to create the illusion of actual movement. And all of this predating modern film cameras. Now, animation as we know it began with the advent of the film camera in 1888, and there were such notable pioneers as Emile Renault, Winsor McCay. He was this cool guy that did this whole Gertie the dinosaur thing, where he would tour around with this film of an animated dinosaur, and he would interact with it and feed it things. It was really neat. There's J. Stuart Blackton, Emile Cole, a lot of influential French folks in animation in those days. Segundo de Chamon, Eadweard Muybridge, he was an interesting character who would use photographic equipment and tripwires to record the movement of animals and people. And in fact, it started anecdotally as him attempting to prove that when a horse was galloping, all four of its feet were off the ground at the same time at some point in the gallop. And so he used these picture cameras to prove that. So tons of really remarkable and influential people in the history of animation. Now, the 12 principles of animation, which you'll hear referred to a lot, and I'll talk about, and these are things that still inform contemporary animation to this day. These were established at Walt Disney Studios in the 1920s and leading up to the release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. You can read more about that in a book called The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson. But that was some of the most influential animation work that still informs what we do to this day. Now, it's worth mentioning that Norm McClaren and his pioneering work at the National Film Board of Canada is one of the reasons why Canada enjoys a rather outsized influence in the field of animation for a country of its small size, and why you find Canadian animators everywhere in the world. Now, we are going to be using edge registration to deal with sort of the flipping of our animation. So as we're drawing, we've got these pieces clipped together, we've tapped them together. Ordinarily, they'd be using what's called peg registration, which is these punched holes in the bottom of the page, and you set it down on a peg bar, and that keeps it from shifting around. But we're using edge registration, but it still allows us to sort of grab our pages and flip them so we can have a drawing and a drawing underneath and a drawing underneath and see how those drawings are behaving together. And that's what we're going to be doing. But before we even get to that point, we're going to shift to designing our character to be easily animated. But we'll do a little bit more warm up. For more advanced exercises, we would also draw ellipses, the idea of a circle as seen in three-dimensional space, like that we're looking down on it. Getting good at practicing those structures is very helpful. Or you could draw three-dimensional cubes. One of those principles of animation, solid drawing, had a lot to do with being a practiced artist, being able to draw really well, really consistently.